when I saw that article, the Silicon Valley Sound, I didn't know what that was even referring to. I had to have someone explain it to me.
Hello, and welcome to episode 28 of the Who Cares Anyway podcast. My guest is Philip Peters of, several bands, as we will hear in this episode, but the main one is Quiet Room. And so this takes us back to the dawn of the 80s in Silicon Valley, as it was just coming to be known, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and other little towns in that vicinity. And in fact, if you look on the back of the Quiet Room single that came out in 1981, there's a little motto that says, the Silicon Valley Sound. That was not put there by Philip Peters or anyone in Quiet Room, but rather by Paul Draper, original bassist for the Sleepers, who ran the little record label Win Records that put out the Quiet Room single, as well as a handful of singles by other Palo Alto area bands that we'll hear about in this episode. What makes this episode a little more timely is the fact that earlier this year, I guess just a couple of months ago at this point, a new Quiet Room release came out, and I'll read a little blurb from the description. So it says, in 1982, Philip Peters started writing what would be the next batch of Quiet Room songs. The backing tracks were recorded by Bart Thurber, but never finished. They were put aside and forgotten until 2025 when the original 4-track tape was found. Philip then completed the 6 songs by adding vocals and some overdubs, as was intended back in 1982. So here, for the first time, is the completed Lost Quiet Room demos, Sing Only to Me. And so that's available on Bandcamp, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes, of course. But this gives us an opportunity to come back to this area, Palo Alto, that spawned the Sleepers and a handful of other interesting groups that I just was not able to get into in the book. The Sleepers kind of moved up to, or at least most of them moved up to San Francisco and sort of by default became a San Francisco band. But that connection between the Palo Alto, Stanford, again, budding Silicon Valley area, and San Francisco itself was, an important component of what was going on. But anyway, this is our chance to get into some of that history, as well as hearing about the new Quiet Room release. And so as I sit here and think through what we talk about in the episode and whether any of it needs any additional background, I don't think any of it does. And so I'll just go ahead and step aside and let us get into the episode. So I hope you enjoy this, my interview with Philip Peters.
You feel it pulsing inside you. I'm actually from what's now Menlo Park. At the time when I lived there, I don't think it was even, my little area was just county. I'm pretty sure it was called San Mateo County. And it was kind of like the same area that Bob Gaynor came from. And it was like not the nice, pretty Menlo Park that we think of nowadays. It was more like run down kind of Menlo Park. So that's basically where I started learning music and playing in a band with my friend Brad Gates. He lived over in Atherton, and so we were learning guitar. I'd met Bob a couple of times, but I wasn't really in his crowd. But we were always playing and trying to do just cover music of the day.
Would this have been after punk had already become a thing, or was this?
No, this would be before, like around, okay. Like 1974, 75.
Oh, okay.
And so then when we started to hear about punk, we were definitely really interested. We thought that was just like so much cooler than what we had been doing. And so we started kind of shortening our songs and making them faster, and we always liked to just play everything really fast. We used to love covering the old Beatle songs, like from the Cavern days, but we do them really fast and loud. So it was kind of almost sounding like punk already. And but we didn't have a drummer until we through Chimera Record Shop in Palo Alto, we met Steve Shaughnessy, and he was working at Chimera, and we would go in there, and he would have all the cool punk records and just like everything we hadn't heard about yet, he knew about. And then we found out he was a drummer, so we asked him to come, play with us, and it worked out great from the beginning. It's like our first rehearsal was just perfect. It was like a magical rehearsal, and we just played all sorts of weird stuff. We played some Ramones songs, probably tried some of our amped up Beatles songs, and so that worked out really well. And then we decided we had to start trying to find gigs. I think the first gig we ever did was at Kenyatta College, which was a college in that area. And I remember we started our set and it was immediately too loud. They hadn't realized how loud it was going to be. So they complained like on the first song, you got to turn down. And we turned down a little. And then next thing you know, they just unplugged us. So that was the end of that gig. And then somehow we met Paul Draper. I'm not sure how. It must have been through Steve. And he came to see us with his wife at the time, Crystal. And he was like kind of looking around to maybe manage a band. And he can't. He doesn't remember wanting to manage us for some reason. Every time I talk to him about it, but he was saying, I could probably help you guys get some gigs, and he was giving us advice. And I remember, I think his wife Crystal told us we should cut our hair because we still had like long hippie hair at this time. So we took her advice and we got our hair cut in some kind of hideous punk. What we thought was punk is as best as we knew from our experience in Menlo Park. And let's see, then we got a gig. I think our second gig even was at another college. It was at Foothill College. We met all the people at KFJC, all the disc jockeys. Like we met Boris there, and the others, and we did really good at that gig. And then from then we started getting shows up in San Francisco, like at the MAB and all the other clubs. Let's see, like the Savoy Tivoli.
Okay.
And there was a place called the Deaf Club. It was actually a club for deaf people.
Yeah.
And then we did all the Keystones, like Keystone Berkeley, Keystone Palo Alto. That was our main place. And the Stone, we didn't get too many gigs at the Stone in the Roommates. I did that more in Quiet Room. I don't think the Stone was open to many punk shows.
Right. What I gathered was that the Stone was across the street from the MAB and on Broadway, which came in a little bit later, but the Stone was always the metal place. That's where in like the Metallica stuff they'll talk about or a little bit, hair bands and stuff. Whereas I would see a lot of bands that would play the the one in the East Bay and then down there in Palo Alto, the Keystones as being a little bit more like a Buhe like. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird though. They did have at the Stone Secret Affair, a mod band, and
Okay.
so they did try to branch out. Although it was funny, that show, it was Secret Affair, was a British mod band, and the opening act was Johnny Winters. So it must have just been something with the record label that put that together. But yeah, that was crazy.
Okay, and then I should backtrack because you said the Roommates, and so that was the original band with you and Brad, and who I should also mention about Brad. I met him a couple of years ago because I went out there to see the first Sleepers AD show with at a studio over in Oakland, and he's singing with that version of the current version of them, and so I put that name together. But that was pre-Quiet Room for you, the
Yeah,
Roommates.
Quiet Room. Yeah, and let's see what else. So we got, yeah, the gigs we did in the roommates was like we played with the Flaming Groovies, Jim Carroll, Gang of Four, the Cramps, the Undertones, the Members, that kind of thing. Plus various other, local bands. And those are actually the only ones I have posters of. Some I have like vague memories, but I don't have anything to prove it. So I don't really like to say it out loud because I'm never sure. There was a big controversy. We played with the Ramones for a few years, but we debunked that. We just saw the Ramones at the Keystone Palo Alto, and it was this big, crazy night. But yeah, we didn't play with them though.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
But any record, because I have never come across. I don't know. I'm always looking things up on Discogs and follow the different names of people in Quiet Room, and definitely see a lot for Bart Thurber. But the
Uh-huh.
only one that it lists for you was what was Quiet Room. But did the roommates do any recordings?
No, we never got recorded. Those ones I have on Bandcamp are just a little cassette tape that we actually recorded ourselves at where we used to rehearse at Brad's house, and we just put on the tape and went through our set basically and tried to make it all professional. And I think we ended up I think we were actually going to use that tape. We sent it to KSJO, a radio station at the time, because they were having a contest. So we thought we'd win this definitely. And that was our only other copy, was that cassette that's on Bandcamp now. And I should say also, I forgot that we started as a three-piece, but then Bart Thurber joined the band, and he was like our lead guitar for a while.
And
So that was
who was Brad Gates doing lead vocals and bass, or were
we
you?
we were like a dual lead vocal band. So Brad did bass and he sang half the songs, and I played guitar and sang half the songs. We thought we were like the Beatles kind of.
Okay, and then if and Bart Thurber is a name that you had mentioned in conjunction with the discovering the tapes, and then I knew that name was familiar, and then yeah, he's recorded hundreds of things, and I was just looking at that, and
Yeah, he's on, yes, House of Faith is what he calls his recording. So he's that guy.
right, right, yeah, I'm kind of curious that like how it got from the roommates to Quiet Room. Did it morph, or did one break up, and then
It kind of we had the four piece then, and we were kind of just groping. We didn't really know what to do, kind of like searching for ideas. And then we started to kind of have different ideas, and then I basically got kicked out of the band. They remember it differently. They remember it as like me leaving mutually or something like that. But yeah, they decided to go on as a three piece without me, and so I was kind of out of it at that point, and I was looking around for something else to do. And the first thing I did actually was join Half Church. I was in the first lineup of Half Church, and we did like a photo shoot, and we played a party, and then we did one gig at the Savoy, and then basically that was it. I was out. But we did do that. Those we did. I do have some recordings, like our first set of me with Half Church. So that was pretty cool. And then
when records recorded. So of the band of the non-sleepers record, well, the sleepers were the first thing on that came out on When, and
uh,
then I'm just trying to just from memory here. So Half Church and Quiet Room were two of the others, and there weren't that many others in the
I think
early
Quiet
years.
Room. Yeah, I think the Half Church came out a few years later on Win, and I'm pretty sure the Quiet Room single came out before that, as I
Okay.
recall.
Yeah, I have to cheat and look at this. So that it was an he was running an independent label, but there wasn't a it was on somewhat of a shoestring. I mean, the let's see, the Sleepers EP came out in 1978. Half
Okay.
Church, The Start, oh well, just The Start, and Quiet Room are all listed as coming out in 1981, and then something called Carne Asado 83, and then that was it for the you know, until 2011. And it looks like, okay, So Carne Asado has a couple of has Steve Shaughnessy, Bart Thurber, so also from that group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was
So
a somewhat tight knit kind of group of bands, or
yeah, very tight knit. In fact, the start was the roommates without me. So when I left the
oh,
roommates, they formed this
okay.
start, and I formed Quiet Room.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, right, right. Okay. I see it. Okay. I had
Yeah,
never put that together. Okay.
there you
Okay.
go.
So the family tree is kind of not so much a
Making
tree as
more
like a,
sense now.
yeah.
There was another band also, Happy Death. I don't know if they
Okay.
recorded or not. They were like all girls from the Palo Alto area that we all knew.
Okay.
And they put together a band. It was actually really good.
Okay. I've seen that on the flyers, but
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't look like there's a recording there. But in terms of Quiet Room, like I gather that it went from a five piece to a four piece. So maybe there was originally a live drummer and then not. Is that how it
No,
evolved?
actually backwards. It was
Oh,
after I left Half Church, I got together with a bass player, Dave Sampson. He was like the first, me and him were the first version of Quiet Room, just a two-piece.
okay.
And we had a little Dr. Rhythm drum machine, and we just wrote a bunch of songs. Well, I wrote a bunch of songs, and we went out to do our first gigs with just the two of us. And
Oh, okay.
then we added a keyboard player, so there was three, and we did some time like that. And then we finally we got back together with Bart, and he played guitar with us for a while. So that was four. And then we finally, in the end, added the drummer. That was
Oh,
Don
okay.
Remain, and we were a five-piece. So it kind of like slowly grew.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, well, but this is jumping way ahead, and we can kind of come back to this later. But the recently released recording was,
Yeah, that was a weird thing. It was a recording after Quiet Room broke up, basically. Well, we kind of just faded out and broke up. It wasn't like a big dramatic breakup or anything. But they were all, I was living in San Francisco at this time around 1982, and they were all still back in Palo Alto. And so I apparently made this series of songs, and I recorded just the backing tracks on a reel to reel with Bart. Bart wasn't playing, but Bart recorded it, and he took notes of everything. That's the only way I know about this tape. And I just recently got it back from him, and I found it. And so it's only me on the tape, and it was songs that we never actually completed. So I had to kind of think of. I had no record of the songs either, so I basically just made up new lyrics and new vocal and added it to the old recordings as the next Quiet Room album would have been.
okay.
Had
Okay,
a,
that was kind of what I was thinking, that maybe it had started as a full band and then gone in the direction of a two or one piece, but it kind of did both.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, it started small. It ended up as a five-piece, and then we just basically collapsed and ended. And then it's like I said, I made those tracks as if we were going to still get together again, and we would play to those backing tracks, but it never happened. So there you go. That's why it ended up with just me.
Was it hard to get back into the mindset of connecting with that, especially given that you didn't necessarily know what your vocals were? I mean, how did you get back into like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was it was kind of hard. I mean, I had to basically it was like collaborating with a 24-year-old kid that I used to know and I hadn't thought about in years. And yeah, but once I started doing it, it all kind of started to flow. And I remember like what ideas I used to think about in Quiet Room and what the vibe of Quiet Room was. So yeah, it was really an interesting project.
two questions, I guess. I saw that you all opened for Duran Duran. Was that one show at the I-Beam or was that multiple shows? And what was the lineup at that point?
Oh, that was one show at the I-Beam. That was like right near the end with the full band. Yeah,
Okay.
that was like the first gig they did in the US, as I recall. And yeah, that was a huge gig for us. That was kind of so after that it was kind of a letdown for us. I think that was probably why we broke up. But yeah, to backtrack a little, we started just me and Dave as two people playing our gigs, and we actually some of our first gigs were with the Sleepers because we already knew those guys. I had met well, we knew Paul, and I'd met Michael a few times, and we got along pretty good. He really liked what we were doing in Quiet Room. He always gave us great encouragement. And then I guess at that point they turned into the Clocks of Paradise with Michael and
Okay.
Ricky, and so we did some gigs with them. And then we went on to like Echo and the Bunnymen and the Stranglers, and then we got the Duran Duran show. And then we ended up headlining our own show at the I-Beam also. And then after that, I'm pretty sure that was when we broke up. So
Okay. Okay.
if this makes
And
sense at all.
no, well, I mean, yeah, things were changing pretty quickly at that point because I mean, if you look at say like the Sleepers recording from '78 versus well, they did the Mirror Theory thing with the drum machine and then but then Painless Nights is going in its own direction. But you
Mm,
but it sounds like there might have been a similar sort of evolution or progression or whatever you call it with your stuff because it sounds like you were doing more punk rock kind of stuff. And then
yeah,
I don't know if I saw I was looking through some of those clips on the Quiet Room page and the Win records, and Paul was saying the sound of Silicon Valley, which is
yeah.
interesting because that's very early. But I mean, more broadly, people would have been using terms like new romantic or it's not really synth
Blitz.
pop or new wave or but was there any of that resonated with you or that people were applying to like in describing what you all were doing at the time?
Oh yeah, we were definitely in that crowd. They used to call it Blitz also because of the Blitz Club in London. And
Okay.
yeah, that was the thing in the roommates. In the roommates, I had already, met Michael. We all had, and we were all inspired by the Sleepers, what they were doing. We thought it was so different from the roommates, and so I guess when we broke up, I wanted to pursue that path more, and they kind of went more into the traditional kind of mod or the Paisley Underground. I've heard it called before also. That's what the start
Okay.
was. So the two
Okay.
bands kind of diverged different directions.
Okay. And then, and thinking about other stuff in the Bay Area, I mean, Michael was also in Tuxedo Moon, but even the stuff they did without him, I can hear a little bit of commonality with that in Quiet Room. And then there was Voice
Oh yeah.
Farm, but at the same time, I know that something like Voice Farm, I mean, I think they opened for Depeche Mode, but they were probably getting a lot of influence from the UK. And
Uh,
I guess in your case, I was wondering, how much of what you were hearing was coming from overseas or far away as opposed to locally. I guess it was probably some sort of mix of the two. Um,
um, a little bit of a mix. Mainly, it was from the British bands. I mean, those were the bands that I was attracted to at the time, and also local, like the Sleepers, Clocks of Paradise, Tuxedo Moon. There was a band I remember called Factrix, I think.
oh yeah,
Factrix from San
yeah.
Francisco. They
Mhm.
were like a total noise band, but yeah, that was really inspiring. I never ended up doing that kind of thing, but it was really inspiring to hear that. And yeah, the British bands were into the whole like dance thing, and I thought that was really cool. Quiet Room definitely went in that direction a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of for somebody my age, I had to kind of understand this sort of in reverse or after the fact that a lot of stuff that was huge and that broke through on MTV when I was about 7 or 8 years old was Underground 2 or 3 years before that. So
Uh-huh.
Human League would be one that somebody was telling
Oh,
me
yeah.
about being really into their 7 inches that were coming out in '79 on import labels. And then 2 or 3 years later, 2 years later, they have some of the biggest hit songs that, that
Yeah.
were, and then eventually there's kind of a backlash to that by, '83 or so. But there would have been a period in there where that was on the cusp or was underground or was certainly not really popular yet
Yeah, it
in
was
the broader
like,
conscious.
yeah, cutting edge, basically. It was like going to be the next big thing, but it wasn't yet. Even bands, I remember, like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, they were like a
Right.
total cutting edge, dark sounding band. And yeah, it's amazing where they went with it. We never made it there, but yeah, all that stuff was really new and it would seem really exciting to me.
Uh, There was also sort of a, I don't know, at the same time of as punk, but some, I guess, slightly older uh, groups or musicians, things like, I mean, certainly Roxy Music, but things like Ultravox or
Oh
that
yeah.
I guess were kind of an earlier generation, but were um, kind of like pre-new wave. I mean, they weren't really punk, but they might have been grouped in with that. But was stuff like that also an influence or
Oh yeah,
what?
big time influence. Ultravox, also Visage with Steve Strange.
Right?
That was
Okay.
I thought that was just great.
So Michael told me about. I mean, I'd heard about Magazine, but never listened to him until he mentioned, in particular, their second album. And so I realized,
Uh-huh.
oh, this guitarist, John McGeoch, is also in this, that, and the other, and was in Visage as well. Somebody did a bio of him a few years ago
Oh yeah.
that I read, and that put a lot of those pieces together, uh, as far as and so Visage wasn't his main thing, but he did that in addition to Susie and the Banshees and Magazine
Mhm.
and all of this. But
Yeah, he was definitely one of the good ones. Really good.
and then at that same time, I mean, it was right around then that also you had the like hardcore really coming in, and that would be its totally its own thing that I don't know how much of a presence that had in Palo Alto. It seems like in San Francisco, it really took hold by about 1982, at the same time that a lot of the, for lack of a better word, arty kind of synthesizer stuff was sort of fading out. And, Tuxedo Moon moved away, and
Mhm.
Sleepers, Michael was kind of, having a little trouble keeping things together at that point, and Factrix had broken up. The band Indoor Life had moved away. Not all of these are necessarily like synth heavy bands, but the ones that I think of as being more, again, not in a bad way, but arty. And then, and I don't know, was there something in the broader sort of musical climate that made it harder to continue, or was it that it was, or did you all have certain kind of commercial expectations that you felt like you needed to meet, or what was it
Yeah, I
that kind
think
of
that
made caused the band to fall apart? Yeah.
it was weird. I mean, looking back on it, it's like it was so much about being our artistic, what we really wanted to do. At least for me, it was. I mean, if I felt like I was getting into a rut with Quiet Room, and I couldn't really write anymore. And basically, that's all it took for me to just say, you know what, we can't go on anymore. We have to break up, start something new, or I mean, I don't remember me breaking up Quiet Room, but I do remember just kind of the excitement dying down, and you know, that's how I guess immature we were about it all back then, you know. But yeah, the hardcore thing, I remember that coming up a lot, and just like more and more becoming kind of just like rock music. So that makes sense around 82. Yeah.
'Cause you had I mean, that was when Maximum Rock and Roll started publishing. It was a radio show by that name before, but the first issue was 82, and then the compilation that came along with it with the Not So Quiet on the Western Front, and that was quite a long way from 1979, 1980. And again, in my researches, so many of like the Savoy, Clubfoot, places that were more eclectic, maybe a little bit older in terms of the people. Maybe they were a little more mid to late 20s or something like that, and the hardcore was a lot more suburban teenager. Just within the span of a couple of years, that kind of seemed to be a pretty big change, and then at the same time, a lot of the stuff that was closer to what you all were doing was becoming commercial, but it doesn't sound like the commercialization was an issue because it seems like you all kind of broke up before that was even really a thing.
Yeah, that's it exactly. We kind of broke up before it exploded into a big top 40 thing that we could have all taken advantage of, you know. But yeah, that's what happened. And it's like I say, except for those tracks I found on the reel to reel, those are weird because um well, because first of all, I have no memory really of making them, except I can hear myself on the tapes, and I know that Bart took meticulous notes and he wrote down Philip Peters, 1982, and so yeah, I think I got a little turned off by the dancey kind of qualities of a lot of that stuff, and I wanted to go back and do something more kind of darker and moodier, and so that's what I think where those tapes came from. But then after that, I did nothing until up to about, I think it must have been maybe 1984. I got back together with Brad and Bob Gaynor, and we formed Heru Raha in San Francisco. And that I don't know if you want to go that far or
No,
not.
no, yeah, because I did, that was another thing that clicked because when I interviewed Bob Gaynor, this would have been, I don't know, 2019 probably. He mentioned that, and then when I met Brad Gates, I kind of put those two together, and then I was looking back at it just this week and realized, oh, you were in it. So that's those kind of from the early days of Palo Alto or fairly early days. But I've never heard any, and well, I guess I've heard a little bit of snippet from YouTube, a single, I guess, or an EP that you all put out.
Yeah, we put out one EP,
And
a 3 song
yeah,
EP.
okay. Did you all open for Faith No More at one point, or am I imagining that? Uh,
Um, I
Faith No
don't think
Man.
so.
Okay,
Honestly, that's
okay,
interesting. Kind of rings a bell.
okay,
I would have been around that time period, but I don't have any poster of it or anything though.
okay.
Mhm. We did a lot of shows with the Sea Hags. Have you heard of the Sea Hags from that
Yeah,
time period?
okay, yeah,
They were a really good band at the time, and actually, um, one of the guys, what was his name? On the Sea Hags. Oh, Ron Yoakum was the lead singer. He really liked us, so he came to our rehearsal once and wrote a song with us. He kind of had a song in mind he wanted us to do, so he kind of gave us this song that we tried to do for a while, and that was really cool. And yeah, that was um, that was more in the mid '80s. I'd say mid to late '80s. That was all going on.
okay. And in between there, were you? I don't know if you were going to school or working, or you don't have to get into it, but were you just kind of taking a break from doing music then?
Yeah, I took a break from music. Yeah, definitely. Just kind of trying to live a normal life, which didn't last long. I found myself missing music like immediately.
Were there bands that you liked in that period when you weren't playing? Were you still going out to see stuff, or was it had it
No,
petered out for you?
I went completely out of music when I went out of it. But I remember the big hardcore scene seemed like that was like all I ever heard about. And then I remember, of course, the metal scene kind of started getting really popular. Yeah, there were other bands that were really good, like Trial or Glorious Din, and
Mhm.
like I said, the Sea Hags were like our favorite. There was also House of Wheels.
Right, Paul Castile. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I know all about Glorious Den and Trial. Well, I don't say all about him, but I'm in
yeah.
touch with Eric, the singer of Glorious Den, which uh,
Oh, cool.
which is, totally different group of people, but they were the part of the small group of bands that was maybe tapping into some of the same influences that you all might have been a few years earlier,
Yeah,
minus the electronic stuff, because they
yeah. It
were.
was almost like a very early goth scene, what they call goth now. I mean, because I do remember it was kind of like a rejection of all the synth pop that had gotten so big. And now, I mean, it used to be cutting edge, but now it was just like mainstream. So a lot of bands were going more underground again, like Glorious Din, Trial. And that's basically what we tried to do in Hera Raha. We were kind of very anti anything commercial.
Did you know Ricky at all? Did you ever interact with him
Yeah,
very much?
not too much. I didn't get along with Ricky. I met Michael Belfer one time. There was a lot of people always hanging out at our apartment, and there were people like one night people were coming in and out, and The Cure came on the radio, "Killing an Arab." I think it was their first single, and Michael came running into the apartment. He said, "Oh, I love this song," and I said, "Oh yeah, I love this song too." And we talked a little bit, and then he looked at my records. He saw that I had a Cheap Trick record, and he said he loves Cheap Trick also. And we both were kind of, you know, talking about Cheap Trick for a while. But yeah, he was always, really encouraging. Now, Ricky, on the other hand, I met him a few times. He was always pretty loaded when I met him. I mean, maybe he was always like that. I don't know. But one time he came over to the apartment and we kind of had some argument. I don't even remember what it was about exactly. So I kind of kicked him out of the apartment. And I saw him afterwards at a gig because, like I said, we were playing, Quiet Room was doing shows with the Sleepers. And by the time I saw him, he kind of forgot about the incident. So we just had a very, very tentative kind of relationship. It was okay.
Right. And then at that point when you all played with the Sleepers, was that when the McLeod brothers and Mike White were in the band?
Yeah, it was. The first gigs we did with them, they were calling themselves the Sleepers. I do know that because I have a few posters. But then somehow, yeah, I guess they were already the Clocks of Paradise, but they hadn't started using that name yet, maybe.
Yeah, I think that was always really hazy. But it seems like, they went on an East Coast tour that was kind of a disaster and that broke up the band.
Uh-huh.
And I've gotten different recollections from different people about how that unfolded, and memories being pretty hazy. But that was somewhere in the spring to summer of '81, and but Ricky didn't really stay with the Clocks. If he ever was with the Clocks of Paradise, it wasn't for very long because he kind of moved over to Toiling Midgets, and then I guess
Uh-huh.
Connie Champagne was Clocks of
Yeah, yeah.
Paradise eventually.
Oh, that makes sense though, because yeah, I remember doing shows with her in that band. So I did. The first ones were with Ricky. That must have been the Sleepers, and then Clocks of Paradise was with her. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and what about, so then at that point, I guess Tim Mooney was long gone, but did you ever know him?
Oh
Original
yeah,
Sleepers drummer? Okay.
yeah. I've just ran into him a few times, but wasn't great friends with him. But yeah, I knew him. He seemed like a
Yeah.
really good guy. In fact, I talked to him later on, like around 2010, when I was doing my home recording. I was going to go to him for some recording, but I never got around to it. Yeah, the one I knew the most was Paul, definitely.
Okay. And did he do the visuals for because it was the back cover with that it's black with the green uh which is what computer monitors would have looked like at the time. I mean, that's what it still looked
Yeah.
like when we got our first computer. Um and again, I hadn't seen that and that motto, the sound of Silicon Valley, or noticed it.
Uh-huh.
How obviously that is Silicon Valley, and that there was a but I was trying to gather like when that term started being used, and I mean I think I tracked down a something all the way back to the very tail end of the 60s, but it did really seem to pick up in the late 70s. But there was an interview
Uh-huh.
with the Sleepers and Search and Destroy in 1978, and Michael did mention something about this is where all these computer chips are made, but it would have been hard to know what a huge impact all that stuff was going to make. But I mean, how much was that part of the consciousness in terms of this technological sort of revolution brewing there? Was that seeping in at all?
I had no knowledge of it really. The only thing I knew about it was that Paul worked in that area. That's like the pretty much all. It didn't impact me at all. And yeah, Paul did do all the graphics on that record, by the way. But yeah, we knew. I never knew anything about the what it actually meant. I didn't know what silicon was, you know. I knew the area, that's where Paul worked. But yeah, it was like it was a very small thing, I guess, at the time. It hadn't blown up into a huge global thing yet. There's an article on the Quiet Room Facebook page called the Silicon Valley Sound. Have you seen that?
Right. Right. That's kind of part of what I was referring to. I mean, I did see it on the back of the record, but
Uh,
then noticed that a couple of, or at least that one article was, I think the article was written about it. It was like a concert review, but the concert review itself, or the flyer might have also used that term. And but that was somehow I hadn't come across that before, and it probably it wasn't on the back of this 1978 Sleepers record, and who knows, maybe
uh,
those 2 or 3 years it had there had been an upswing in terms of some of the consciousness of that. Or I mean, just trying to think of what Apple Computer, uh 1976, 78, into the early 80s. I think
uh,
that's starting to be, I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't think of when their very first computer consumer products would have come out, but it was probably in that window.
yeah, exactly. I didn't know anything about computers. I when I saw that article, the Silicon Valley Sound, I didn't know what that was even referring to. I had to have someone explain it to me. But yeah, one thing that I just remembered is I remember one time Paul arranged for us to come play at lunchtime at the place he worked, at somewhere in wherever in Silicon Valley. So we did like a quiet room gig, and some of the other bands were there too. And yeah, that was pretty funny. All the people were coming out of the offices with their. I remember them still having like, it looked like they were wearing suits and ties still in that era. And just like, not knowing what this music was all about at all.
Was it the Stanford Research Institute where he was working still, or was that
Yeah. Yeah.
okay? Okay, because I knew he worked there at some point. I wasn't sure if he still worked there, but I was going to say, coming speaking of Valley, there was Foothill Valley, and somebody got on my case for I guess I erroneously stated that it was in Sunnyvale, which
Yeah.
I know that I think Michael had said it that way, and he might have simplified it for me because he would have known that I wouldn't know the first thing about Sunnyvale versus Los Altos Hills. But
Mm.
And I didn't think to look it up anyway. But Foothill, KFJC and Foothills. I mean, he did tell me that that played a role in the last Sleepers lineup coming together. I think that's how he met the McLeod brothers. But I don't know. Were they the main underground sort of radio station or college radio station in the area, or were there others down there in the
I remember
peninsula?
them being the radio station. They were like something we all listened to. We did an interview or two there. All my bands did interviews there, and we even played over the radio a few times in the studio. And yeah, they were like the biggest thing down there, KFJC. That's where we met Bob. Well, I met him earlier, but that's where Bob was a DJ at the time, and so they were the big thing. KFGC definitely.
And but it's a pretty small school. Is that? I mean, I don't know.
I suppose
It,
by
it,
standards, yeah,
it's actually, well, actually, I look at it now, 13,000.
yeah,
But as a community college, I mean, I guess that would make it somewhat comparable to a city college kind of thing.
yeah. It
City College of
seemed
San
that way,
Francisco.
that kind of vibe.
Okay. And then, I mean, I've been in Palo Alto, I think precisely two times in my life. I mean, I both times, well, and I don't even know if this would be Palo Alto because I was at Stanford and that's not in Palo Alto.
Technically, no, but yeah, it's that area.
That
But yeah,
area.
it's
Okay.
not like it used to be when we lived there. It's so much more built up and fancy and money. It really wasn't like that at the time. I remember Palo Alto to me was a was a kind of a small, artsy kind of an area. I mean, bigger than Menlo Park, definitely. Menlo Park was just suburbia, like houses. But that little stretch of Palo Alto, University Avenue, was really a cool, artistic kind of a place. It was really great. We lived right off of the street for a year or two when we moved out of Menlo Park. And then the Varsity Theater was another big attraction. They used to have live bands. Have you heard of the Varsity shows at all?
It sounds familiar. I think Paul might have mentioned it
Uh-huh.
in the interview I did with him. Yeah, I mean, how often would y'all go up to San Francisco? Because it would have been what without traffic, it's like 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah, it used to be great back then. We always would pop up there in the roommates and quiet room because well, we did shows up there for one thing, but then we'd also just go to shows up there. And then we finally moved there, I guess around 82, me and Brad.
One thing on the Quiet Room era, I was, looking through the photos on the, the Facebook page, and some of the gadgets or the technology, I mean, might have within, let's say by the time of the mid 80s, might have seemed kind of dated. It's now considered probably vintage, but I don't know if you could. You had the Dr. Rhythm, and I was looking at that. A drum machine
Yeah,
that doesn't even have a sequencer on it, which is did it?
right.
Yeah, and
You were on your own, like you and the drum machine. But that's what's on the Quiet Room single was that exact drum machine.
okay, and yeah, and there was also a Casio, and then there was also a part of a Hammond organ, an attachment to a Hammond
Yeah,
organ.
yeah, that was another drum machine. That's like on the new Quiet Room album on Sing Only to Me is that drum machine, the same one. It had a weird kind of funky bossa nova kind of a beat that I liked. So yeah, it was a break from the Doctor Rhythm.
Was that I imagine well there was also a Moog synthesizer. I know it's supposed to be Moog. I always have trouble with that, but um, that would have been probably the crown jewel of your of the
Yeah,
equipment that y'all had.
exactly. That was our one legitimate synth, and we just used it for everything. And like that, the drum machine we were talking about, it actually came off of a Hammond organ. It was made to be on top of the organ, you know. So we just took it off the organ and used it. So we had that. We had the Casio, which was kind of a little plasticky toy, but it had a great sound. That's also on the new Quiet Room tracks. Is that little Casio and the Moog?
Okay, yeah, I had a similar Casio as a toy, but it wasn't the exact same one. But there's another Casio that's even dinkier than the one that I had that I got it I got it later, like on eBay in like the 2000s, and then I've
Uh-huh.
heard that actual beat on multiple songs. That it's like fairly big songs or big bands where
Oh yeah. I found you could put the Casio through any of your guitar effects. Like we had a Memory Man effect, which was an echo and a chorus, and you could put it through that. You could put it through distortion. It was kind of like just like a guitar. So you had to, doll it up a little, but it would sound pretty cool in the end.
yeah, I mean it was kind of I mean it took a while for those sounds to be I don't know, to go through sometimes things go through a cycle of being they're current and then they're considered a little out of date and then they come back in.
Yeah.
And now, there's lots of stuff available in terms of, I mean, I have one of these Korg monologue that uh monophonic synth that I got for like $300, which basically new, like a demo. But in 1970s dollars, that would be, I don't know, like $150, which is certainly
Mm.
cheaper than like, I don't know. I talked to different people in different bands and like generally the like good synth equipment was somebody had to have some specific, either they came from some money or maybe somebody got hit by a car and got an insurance payment and they were able to pay for it or something, or like
Yeah.
Tuxedo Moon had some stuff because they had done kind of well, but for the most part it was a shoestring sort of thing, and so it does
Mm.
force a kind of creativity that I mean it's a constraint as opposed to one can now be overwhelmed by options and have too many options and you kind of
Oh
lose
yeah.
definition in terms of
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah. I remember when I first started Quiet Room, I thought, okay, I need some equipment besides my guitar. So I thought about actually I thought about what Michael Belfer was doing. I know he used the Evo on his guitar, and he had a Memory Man pedal. I saw him once, and so I went out and bought those two things, just like, and that pretty much cleaned me out. And then somehow I scraped together a little bit more, and I got the little Doctor Rhythm, and that was basically the first equipment. And then later, when we got our keyboard guy, Simon Asato, he came with his own synth. We don't know how he got it because, like you said, it was very expensive back then. But then suddenly we had a synth, so that was great to add into there.
Was there does and you have the equipment still, does any of it still work, or
I don't have any of it anymore.
oh, you don't have any of it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, did it
I don't know what
break?
happened to
Yeah,
it.
okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. It just went missing somewhere. I think Brad has a one of the drum machines somehow, but the other stuff, I have no idea what happened to it. Could probably find it on eBay now.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah. So you what did you so you didn't uh, and then you were that later band, is it Heru Raha? Is that the right?
Yeah, yeah.
So but that was all basically live instruments.
Yeah, we kind of just went back to the basics on that. We had no keyboard. We were just like guitar. I had a little effect on the guitar, but basically, yeah. And it was just like a three piece.
Did you take another break from music after that? After that group?
Yeah, I did actually. Yes. Until I don't think I started up again until 2010. Around 2010, I started making my solo albums with all the home recording stuff you can do now. So